Welcome, rational thinkers and champions of evidence-based reasoning, to the Free of Faith podcast. This is the place where we dare to peel back the comforting but opaque layers of faith-based claims and expose their logical shortcomings. Today, we're tackling a major question. Are prayers answered in a way that differs from what we'd expect if there were no prayer answering God? We'll explore how the bold promises about prayer in the Bible have been diluted into something completely untestable, rendering them indistinguishable from a universe where no deity exists to answer prayers at all. Grab a seat, clear your mind, and let's cut through the noise. Let's start with the unfiltered, unqualified, bold promises that Jesus and the Bible make about prayer. Here are just a few. The first is in the book of John.
If you ask anything in my name, I will do it.
In Mark it says,
Whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours.
In Matthew we are told,
Ask, and it will be given to you. For everyone who asks receives.
Note that there are no disclaimers, no small print. Jesus isn't hedging his bets. He's making absolute claims. Do you have even the tiniest faith? You can move mountains. Ask for literally anything. It will be done. So what happens when Christians take these promises seriously? Well, reality eventually sets in. No mountains move. No divine intervention is statistically detected. Prayers go unanswered at rates that suggest sheer coincidence rather than divine intervention. At this point, you'd expect believers to concede this failure. But no, it is here the goalposts start moving. A sincere believer, reading Jesus' words at face value, expects to see direct cause and effect relationships between prayer and results. A mother earnestly prays for her sick child to be healed. A devout student prays to ace an exam. Why do they expect tangible, undeniable outcomes? Because that's precisely what the verses promise. But what happens when there is silence? The first excuse enters the picture. You are told,
Maybe you weren't sincere enough. It's not that God's promise was wrong. Your lack of true faith was the problem. Did you truly believe the mountain would move? Were you fully trusting in God, or did you have some doubt?
This excuse shifts the responsibility away from God's promise and onto the believer. Now, rather than a prayer being a simple request, it's a self-examination exercise that presumably measures some vague, subjective standard of true faith. But when prayers continue to fail, believers are introduced to the next qualifier, the selfishness clause.
Were you asking for something selfless and noble? Were your motives actually pure?
Suddenly, divine generosity has a selfishness test.
You probably asked selfishly.
And if the prayer doesn't align with some ambiguous, unstated divine standard of selflessness, that's on you. As failures mount, the excuses multiply. You might hear,
God helps those who help themselves. Maybe God wants you to take action.
This reinterpretation of prayer essentially removes God from the equation. But wait a minute. If prayer works when God is unnecessary to the equation, what exactly is prayer doing? When those explanations fail, the escape hatches widen. We hear that God works on his own schedule.
He will answer. Just not right now.
Of course, delaying a result indefinitely is equivalent to no result at all. If someone promises you $1,000 but keeps saying,
I'll give it to you someday. Just trust me.
Would you consider that a fulfilled promise? And finally, the ultimate fallback.
Maybe it just wasn't God's will.
This is the final airtight defense. The moment prayer doesn't work, believers fall back on,
God's ways are higher than ours. His will is mysterious.
At this point, prayer has become completely unfalsifiable. No result can disprove it, because every possible outcome can be explained away. And that brings us to the heart of the issue. If there's no meaningful distinction between a world where prayer works and a world where prayer is just talking to yourself, then what's the difference between a prayer answering God and no God at all? Let's be scientific for a moment. If prayer were answered, we'd expect clear, measurable differences between the lives of believers and non-believers. Yet, when we study this, we find no statistical difference in recovery rates between those who are prayed for and those who aren't. Christians die in car accidents, natural disasters, and wars at the same rates as everyone else. There is no unique financial prosperity among praying Christians. Every attempted experiment on intercessory prayer results in failure or randomness. When prayer is actually put to the test, it performs exactly as we'd expect if it were doing nothing at all. The promises of the New Testament were once bold and testable. But as reality failed to match those claims, believers redefined those promises into something vague, untestable, and ultimately meaningless.
Prayer is powerful, but only if you do all the work yourself. Prayer is guaranteed, but only if it aligns with God's will, timing, and unknowable plan.
At every stage, the goalposts move. At every stage, the claims become harder to test. And at every stage, the once clear promises of God dissipate into ambiguity. Faith in answered prayer has been reduced to simply an exercise in rationalization. If this conversation has sparked some questions or even some discomfort, that's a good thing. Questioning is the first step toward clarity. Don't settle for easy answers or platitudes. Dive deeper, explore further, and demand evidence. Head over to Free of Faith to read the full article and join the discussion. Let's keep this conversation going, because the pursuit of truth doesn't stop at questioning. It's about finding answers that actually make sense. Thank you for tuning in to the Free of Faith podcast, where we expose the logical failings of faith and celebrate the clarity that comes with reason. Until next time, stay skeptical, stay curious, and remember, rationality always outperforms faith. Engage reality, and I'll see you soon.